Hey YouTube, it's Dana again. I spoke with a friend of mine earlier today, and she, like myself, although I've been doing it for years, she had started heating her house during the time of COVID with wood. Yay! Because of course it's going to save her on her electricity bill. She's taken down some trees at her house, so she has plenty of trees. Her husband is willing to chop the wood up for her, so she has decided to heat her house with wood this year. And so I was talking to her earlier today, and she was saying how she was having an issue starting the fire. And I've been heating my house for over 15 years with wood, so I've kind of developed a technique that I have found is very good. So I'm going to show everybody how to build an upside down fire. This is the type of fire that you can start in your fireplace. You can even start it like when you go camping, wherever you want to start a fire. This is the easiest fire to start. And you literally make the fire upside down. As I go through, I'm going to be giving you guys some tips. So stay tuned and let me kind of get everything situated, and I will be right back. Okay, because I keep a fire going in my house 24/7 in the wintertime, usually about sunset, I will start my new fire. Today, I kind of ignored this fire for a while because I was outside doing some stuff. And so I don't have a lot of embers left, so I'm going to just start from scratch. If you want to if you want to take those out, make sure you have this pail. I guess they call it an ash pail. I've had it for a long time. I got it from Home Depot. It's probably less than $20. And the reason I like this one is because this handle, if you see, and I don't know if you guys can see that, but like on that little edge right there, you see how it kind of pokes out a little bit? Well, that locks this lid on because those embers are going to be really hot. So I put them, I'll put them in here out of the fireplace. I take them away from the house, and then I lock that lid to make sure that it doesn't come off so that the embers can cool down. So let me take these embers out, and I will be right back. Oh, and before I forget, if you do have a fireplace and you have embers or you have ash at the end, when you take that out and once it's cool, dump it into your garden. It's really good. It's nutritious. Tomatoes love it. There's some other vegetables that will also love it, but it will help fortify your soil. And so that way it's not a waste. And another thing, and I just thought about this because I was telling my girlfriend, if you look at the ashes you take out and you have big chunks of wood left, that is literally charcoal. I don't know if everybody knows what the big green egg, those very expensive barbecue things that everybody seems to want recently. But they take a special wood. They can't take regular charcoal. It's a special wood that they take, and that's literally what it is. It's burnt hardwood. So those big chunks that you take out of your fireplace, put them to the side and save them. They're also good for starting a new fire. You can put them in your grill, or you can start a new fire. So I'm going to clean my box out, and I will be back. And here's a hint when you're cleaning it out. Open your flue all the way. And that way, the dust that kind of kicks up when you're doing it will go up into the flue. Okay, once you fill this up, don't let it sit in the house. Take it out immediately. I take this out as soon as it's filled up because I don't want it kind of sitting on the rug or sitting someplace because it will burn. If you have wood floors, if you have carpet, if you have tile, it's going to leave a burnt mark on it. So take this out as soon as it's filled up. I'll be back. Oh, and before I forget, see these gloves? These gloves I bought from Amazon because I'm Amazon junkie. But these are meant for like barbecues. They protect your hand from heat. Years ago, I used to use like construction type gloves because I always had them for gardening or my gardening gloves. And my hands would still get hot. But these are really good. They keep the heat from your hands. I think they're good up to like 700 degrees or something. But so when you're handling buckets or anything in your fire, it's good to have heat-proof or fireproof gloves. The first thing you're going to do when you start an upside down fire is that you're going to get the large pieces of wood. And it just really depends on how big your oven is or how big your insert is, how many pieces you can accommodate. So I picked 2 big pieces out of my pile. And I can usually get 3, except I have this really big chunky piece right here, so I'm going to go ahead and put that on the bottom. Now my stove is narrow but longer, so you may have a stove that comes out further, towards the front, and that's narrower side to side. So therefore you would start your, start your logs whichever way is best for your oven. For my insert, it's this way that first layer goes. But whatever accommodates your oven is fine. So you start out with some chunky pieces at the very bottom. And like I said, I can usually get 3 at the bottom, but because I have a nice big chunky piece today, I can only fit 2. Okay. So your next level of wood, the first one goes this way. The next one goes this way, 90 degrees. So that's your second level. Now that first level is the chunkiest wood that you have. The next level, it just needs to be a little smaller. Now when you make a fire this way, it is more time consuming in the beginning, but once you start it, you can literally walk away from it. You don't have to tend to it like you do when you start the fire from the bottom. So that second level goes up. I don't tend to leave any space in between. I just let the wood fall naturally. So whatever natural space there is, but I don't intentionally leave space. So I do put all the logs together. So now this next level, I'm going to go in this direction, and this will be like my smaller pieces of wood. Okay, so I went through my little wood stack and I found some smaller pieces of wood, and you can see the size of that one. And now because of my oven or my insert is not very tall, I can typically get 3 layers of wood, and then I can start the 2 layers of kindling. So I have one this way, the next one, the chunkiest one's at the bottom, one that comes this way, a little bit more less chunkier than the bottom one, and then I have my smaller pieces on the top going in this direction. So they're kind of stacked on each other. Once again, I do not leave space in between. I push all of the logs together, not really tight, just how they naturally lay. So now what I'm going to do is start my kindling. Okay, another reason I love these gloves is because I usually leave them on the whole time I'm actually doing anything in the fireplace, because sometimes you'll get those splinters from wood, so this kind of stops that. So now I'm going to add my kindling, and I chop this myself from my firewood. And now when I say kindling, I'm talking about pieces maybe about that size. They're just a lot smaller than what's already in there. And so those, and because they're so long, they're going to stick out of the front, I just put them at an angle. You just kind of want your wood to be crisscrossed. And the only reason I put these at an angle is because of their length. If they were shorter, I would put them in this direction. Okay. So as you can see, I went all the way across. There's probably about 5 pieces. So I just kind of go across the wood so that it's nice and even. And now the next thing I'm going to do is, and I was telling my friend this earlier, this paper, whenever I order stuff, it tends to come with this paper in it. Well, I save this paper because a lot of people use newspaper, which very few people get newspapers anymore. So I use this as the paper that I use, but I don't ball it up. When you ball up paper and then you light it, it moves. It gets really light and it kind of moves away. But if you take this paper, and I usually make lengths, and I just kind of squish it up a little bit, nothing fancy, and then I tie it in a knot. So that way when this catches, that knot does not move. And this is actually long enough where I can get 2 knots. And I typically use 6 knots. And that's all the paper that I use for my fire. So if you have paper and you're just kind of crunching it up and throwing it in there, and you're having problems with your fire, try the knots, because this way the paper stays still and it doesn't roll off and fall off the back of a piece of wood. Or 5 and 6. Okay, so So now I'm going to take 3 pieces of my knots and I'm going to sit them on top of here. Okay. And then I'm going to take what most people probably call kindling, these little pieces of wood, and I will break those up. And I start with the larger pieces. And years ago, when I was learning how to start a fire, I read someplace that fire likes chaos. It does not like to be managed. So when I put these pieces in, I kind of lay them crisscross. Now this does 2 things. This helps the fire breathe. Okay, now on top of those, I put 3 more knots. And I do press everything down to kind of keep it where I want it to be. And then I take my smaller little twig-like pieces and I break some of those up. And then I put those on top of my last 3 knots. Okay, so our bottom layer is very thick wood going this way for me. My next layer goes front to back. My next layer goes side to side. And then my kindling, because I can only do 3 layers plus my 2 layers of kindling in my oven. Then I have my kindling and it's diagonal only because the pieces are longer and they will not fit in my oven going from front to back. But that's fine, but diagonal works. And then I have the knots, my bigger pieces of kindling, 3 more knots, and my smaller pieces of kindling. What I have found helpful for me when I start my fire is to have a fan around. And I just found this out by accident. Because sometimes you just need a little oxygen, like you'll see and it's smoldering and you just don't know why. Fan it just a little bit to give it some extra air sometimes and it'll catch right up. The reason this upside down fire is so good is because air, of course air goes up. And the air that you need to start your fire is especially if you have a nice draft going up your flue, that's where the oxygen is. So that's where the fire starts, which is why this is the easiest fire. So I'm going to go ahead and light my pieces, and we're going to cross our fingers because just because you're watching it won't work this time. But typically it catches and I don't have an issue. So I'm going to go ahead and light it, and we're going to see what happens. And what I do is that I find my knots and I simply light them. And make sure your flue is totally open when you start this part. One of my knots was not close enough. And you see how the draft is going up? Now what happens is as that burns, it burns down. So you don't have to constantly tend this fire. And you'll see it's just starting. Yay, it started. It didn't screw up just because you're watching. But this is a really easy way to start a fire. I can just close this up and walk away, and this will just keep burning because it's feeding itself because it's going down into the wood instead of you standing over it, feeding it, trying to keep it alive. So I hope this video helps. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment. I do try to check my comments periodically. This will burn really hot. Like I said, I'm probably going to close this up. And because I'm in the middle of canning some apples that were gifted to me. Yay, apples. And so I hope this helps. Bye-bye. You guys have a good day. And so you'll see that this is feeding itself, which means I don't have to stand here and keep feeding logs on top of it. I can go back into the kitchen and finish canning my my apples. And that'll just kind of sink through the middle and just kind of keep burning all the way down. You can see it's worked its way down to that larger pieces of kindling. And it'll just keep burning like that all the way until it gets to the big chunks. And you see how it's dropping down to that next layer as it goes down? So you don't have to tend to it. It's just going to feed itself. I think some people call this a self-feeding fire. I just call it an upside down fire.